What a privilege to be here. Thank you, David, Cynthia, for the award and for that recognition introduction. I'll tell you, first, when I look at Jack and his introduction, you talk about heroism, whether it's President's Unit Citation or the Congressional Medal of Honor. But I think one of the bravest things he did is the jokes he just said about his wife. God bless, man. I'd be fearful to do the same. Let me tell you that I am deeply honored and I'm humbled to be up here today. And it's humbling when you saw the children that were here earlier. And they are the children of the fallen, and those that continue to help out. And it was actually General Eisenhower, he's the one who led off that humility must be the portion of any man, any leader who receives a claim that's been earned in the blood and sacrifice of his soldiers and friends. And I will tell you that it's those soldiers, it's my friends, it's my families, and it's their actions that are the reason I get to stand up here today and do that. Much appreciated. And I really want to take a moment to thank all the staff for the Children of the Fallen and everything that they've taken care of and all that you do for the sons and daughters of those who have fallen and have given that last full measure for this nation. Thank you very much. What an incredible foundation. Incredible foundation. And that comes back to David Kim, and he gave a very gracious introduction. David, both the CEO and the founder for the Children of the Fallen Patriots. And I've known David, he said, for many years, decades actually. And what I'll tell you back, what everybody in this room actually knows, is you will never find a more generous, a more genuine, and a more gracious person than David Kim. Actually, I got to caveat that. You actually might. And that's his wife, Cynthia. Yeah. We all know Cynthia because side by side, hand in hand with David Kim, they started this foundation. And Cynthia's the co-founder, and now the director for the volunteer programs. She has poured her heart and soul into this. And she doesn't receive a penny for any of it. But that's not what her motivation is. That's not what inspires her. What she cares about, and you see that in her words, you see that in her actions. What she truly cares about is making sure that those children are taken care of those who have fallen, that they have those opportunities that might have been taken from them. That's where her passion is. And I want to thank both David and Cynthia. For 18 years now, they've grown this institution, this foundation, and they nurtured this organization. So back to David and Cynthia, thank you very much. Absolutely. And now the not so pious. I got to shout out to my West Point classmates over there, class of '88. Yeah. Also known as the worst class ever, actually told to us a week before graduation. But how great is that? As I look out there, I see old roommates. I see battle buddies and ranger buddies and drinking buddies and housemates. And I'll tell you, when you're surrounded, and I love them all, God help me, and you're surrounded by the West Point brethren like that, it's an elegant reminder, truly an elegant reminder of how we've journeyed through life together. And West Point does teach you humility. Yeah, sure, through shared hardship. But combat drives that into your core. And it's combat especially where you really learn to rely on your friends, just as we did at the academy. And it's where you learn that they carry you, where you need to be carried, and you carry your brethren with you. And you see that every step of the way. And it's great to see just one story with Eric Krill over there. And over the 4 years, I've got over 4 years deployed. 3 of those I've actually spent with Eric in combat. And you talk about carrying, in this case, both literally and figuratively. Because I'll never forget, we were flying on a mission, we were going off to the the snowy mountains along the Afghan-Pakistan border, up in the mountains in the Hindu Kush. And as the helicopter came in, started to descend, and it hovered just above the snow-covered ground because they didn't want to touch down, and Eric hops out on the left door, hits this big pillowy piece of snow like a Sealy mattress, and he steps off. I jump out on the right door, and that little bit of snow that I landed on gives way to jagged rocks and broken terrain. And I hear a pop, and unbeknownst to me at the time, I broke my ankle. So yeah, pretty pleasant. So we continue to walk through these goat trails. Yeah, there he is. But it's great, but we were out there. So we continued to walk the goat trails for the better part of the day. And we moved in, we were checking on different positions, we have overwatch areas, checking on weapons, great. And I'll admit, by the end of the day, as we're walking back and it's up a hill, I admit, I'm lagging, and my foot is throbbing. So we start to go, we're about 100 meters from the top, and Eric graciously looks back at me and says, "I'll carry you." And I thought, at that moment, all I could picture was an actual picture in the West Point magazine, The Howitzer. Or worse, like some physical caricature that they build out that becomes, an immortal class portion that's down in Washington Hall or Lake Hall. And I looked and I thought, that's a very nice offer, Eric, but absolutely not. I would rather walk or crawl before I get that picture taken and be caught Memorial Day. But I truly love him so. But that's the beauty of our business. You never leave a soldier behind. You always take care of each other. Because our strength is not the individual, but it's the team. And you see that in the way that we conduct our business. But it's also what makes this profession very difficult. And the most difficult thing any of us as a leader can experience is the loss of a soldier. That friend, that brother and sister in arms. And that's exactly what brings us here today. Because it's the mission of the Children of the Fallen is to ensure that every child who has lost a parent, a loss we can never reverse, a pain that we can never truly understand, you can't describe it, but that they have all the support in the world to continue their education, to thrive, to build upon that legacy of their parent who is no longer with them. And ours is a legacy of liberty. It's a legacy of freedom. And it's a sacred oath to defend the Constitution. And since we have lived on American soil, we have fought for American soil. From the revolutions through World War II, the World Wars, from Korea through Vietnam, the Gulf Wars, and the last 20 years on the global war on terror in Iraq and Afghanistan. And even as we do our best, and I assure you, we do our best to avoid sending our young men and women into harm's way, we must prepare for the inevitable future conflict. Because the profession of arms exists for one reason, and that is to fight and win our nation's wars. It's what we do. And there's a great historian, T.R. Fehrenbach, and he describes to us how the lives we lead and the liberties we enjoy, they're not free. And he even states, if the free nations want a certain kind of world, that they have to fight for it with courage, with money, with diplomacy, and with legions. And our American legions are special. They risk everything for this certain kind of world. And it's a world where you rise or fall based on your competence, your skills, your knowledge, your merits. That you are judged on the content of your character. And I can personally attest that these special legions, our men and women in uniform, that they're the most exceptional examples of selfless service. A few years back, I had the opportunity to take courses at Harvard. And I look at my classmates, the look of shock on their face, because believe it or not, I was not known for my academic prowess at West Point. But it also shows when the government pays full tuition, it makes it a little bit easier, I think. But it was in one of these courses that I had an instructor. Now he was very dynamic, he was very engaging. He had run national political campaigns for others. He'd been in public service for decades. And he stepped back and he was literally hectoring to the class. And this was a class composed of individuals who probably who had intended to run for political office. And this is kind of the blueprint of what he saw. But that's not what they got at front. He began by telling them that he was very disappointed with what he saw. He was actually disgusted. That he saw this new generation, this is a few years back, that he saw them obsessed with self-aggrandizement, personal benefit, and the prestige that was associated with a title or a job, but not the work that went with it. And he said, we don't have people that are willing to take risks, to stand up and lead when necessary. He said, we've got a shortage of leadership in this country. And everybody kind of stand back and shocked. So after the class, and he was great, I was a little older than most. Don't let my youthful appearance fool you when I went to engage with him. But after the class, I went up and I talked to him, and I said, I got to tell you, that's not what I live. That my experience in the military, and I just returned from another year in Afghanistan, was just the opposite. That I'm surrounded by leaders. I'm surrounded by those who understand the immense responsibility of being in charge. Not only do they understand it, but they seek it out. They seek it out, they embrace it, and they excel in this daunting environment. That's what I saw. I saw people, often very young people, that they're making a decision to lead in a time of war, in a time of crisis, stepping up and leading. These were leaders that did not define success by how luxuriously they live, by possessions. They used terms like mission accomplishment, taking care of their soldiers, and demonstrating the true nobility of selfless service. That's my experience. And when you ask, what is service? How do I define it? What does it really mean? What is the spirit of the American soldier today that we live with? I can tell you I've seen it. I've seen it through the leadership, I've seen it through their selfless service, and I've seen it through sacrifice. When I look at leadership, I look no further than a young man named Lieutenant John Dennison. He was the West Point class of 2005. He was a platoon leader for me in Iraq during the fight that David talked about. And this guy, he married his West Point sweetheart, and she was a lieutenant also. He used to write her poetry. Now, John Dennison, let me tell you, we were in the 82nd, and this guy was cut right out of Central Casting. Charismatic, chiseled draw, physical beast. People loved to follow him. And in the very beginnings of our deployment, we had an unplanned but pretty violent engagement with the Iranians along the border. And John Dennison, when we were out there, he was able to break contact, exfil his platoon under contact, two-way firefight, and not lose a single soldier. He was calm, he was poised, he was professional, and that's exactly what we expected. And as this deployment continued, John continued to show that type of maturity and judgment, charismatic, my #1 lieutenant. And I saw that as he continued to lead from the front. And it was on this follow-on operation that David talked about that we were challenging the enemy who wanted us out. And it was in those open fields when they were clearing out a very committed enemy that he was cut down. Cut down. But his people followed him because they loved him and they knew what he stood for. That is leading with distinction. When I start talking about selfless sacrifice, I look at a later firefight with a Doc Harriman. Doc Harriman's a combat medic, young E4. Before we deployed, his mother actually came up to me. We had to get on the buses to leave out of Bragg. And she was worried about him leaving. Didn't want him, he's too young, he's trained, he's ready for this fight. So we had this great discussion. Well, Doc Harriman, there's a wounded soldier in an open field in a later firefight. He is crawling under fire to get to that wounded soldier. His aid bag's on his back. As he continues to move, the aid bag literally gets riddled with machine gun bullets. Doesn't hit him, but it hits his aid bag. So he has to stop, turn around, crawl all the way back through the mud, get the resupply, and crawl back out and save that soldier's life to stop the bleeding who had been shot. No concern for his personal safety. That's what it looks like to selflessly serve. And the last one I talk about sacrifice, I think no farther than a young sergeant named Tim Cole. He was a section leader, and he was continuously leading patrols in a contested area that we had had. This is an area that we had had 2 truck bombs that had taken out a building and killed 9. This is an area that our mission was to deny them freedom of movement through the area to reinforce another area. So we were blocking them, but to block them, you have to continuously move or patrol every day in this contested area. And he was out there preparing his soldiers every day for that fight, every day making contact. And on one of these patrols, there was an improvised explosive device that went off. The enemy started an ambush. It was wrapped with chunks of rebarb that literally perforated him, and he died. Here's Sergeant Cole, who fearlessly dove into danger. He knew every day he was going to make contact. He did everything in his power to protect his teammates, to accomplish the mission. That's sacrifice. But what stands out with Sergeant Cole to me? He was the devoted father of 4 young children at the time. 4 children. 4 of these children that will never hug their father again. The sports games, music recitals, weddings of the future, all these events, both big and small, he will never share with his children. And those opportunities are now gone for him. But I bring that up because that is why Children of the Fallen is so incredibly essential. That's why I say it's a privilege to be here, because it's to ensure that the Sergeant Cole's family is cared for in the ways that matter. And the motto says, if it takes a village to raise a child, Children of the Fallen leads that village. And you can see it. You saw it on the stands here earlier today. That's success. That's what it means. Because in the most desperate of times, the most dangerous of situations, it's the men like the John Dennisons, the Doc Harrimans, the Tim Coles that don't hesitate to act. They're intrepid, they're pious, they're dedicated. They're American soldiers who gave all of their tomorrows for our todays. That's who stands out to me. And where would our military be? Where would our country be without those type of individuals? But these men and women, they raised their hand and they said, send me. They volunteered selflessly to defend our freedom. But the children that were up here earlier, they take no such oath. They don't raise their right hands, volunteer for this. They don't choose to serve. And yet, they do serve selflessly, because in the house to which that they're born, the family that they inherit, they serve, they give their sacrifice without recompense. And you see it. Our military runs in the spirit of doing what is honorable, even at great risk to yourself. And no matter how the tides change, we have a solemn duty to support the children of the fallen into their futures. Leaders confront and they comfort their formations while also strengthening their resolve. And families, the children, the ones that were up here, they're an inextricable part of that formation. But they're more than that. The values that guided your parents that were up here earlier and fortified their heroic actions, honor, integrity, duty, dignity, they emanate through those children. These values are powerful, they're enduring, and they're the bedrock of the incredible legacies that they carry. When you lose a person in combat, you can't give up even in the darkest of hours. And it can seem that there's nothing more powerful than that loss of their loved one. But there's perhaps just one thing that can shine light on that darkness, and that is the children, those that were here before and the others that are going to be helped. It's their potential. It's their future that's that brightness. Their legacy runs through their veins, it's etched across their hearts, and it's imprinted forever on their memories. And I want to thank the children that are here today for carrying forward that torch. Thank you very much for the opportunity to be here tonight and for the award.